Hello everyone. So we will start our webinar. But before we starting, on the left side of your monitor, you can see a small chart. Please let me know if you could hear me good and you could see picture on your screen. Also in chat, you may put your comments. Please note that if you have any questions during the webinar or after it, please send it to my email. I will mention my email after the presentation because during the webinar, unfortunately, I will not have enough time to answer. Okay, so everything is okay. So let's start. My name is Katerina Bisaga. I'm Assistant Compliance Officer of Eltomo Corporate Services, and today our webinar topic is compliance definition and its main objectives. So today we will cover next questions. We will discuss what is compliance and what is for. Also, we will cover some legislation which relevant for compliance. Also, we will discuss principles of implementing of compliance function, how to organize compliance control in the company. Also, I will share with you basic skills that an expert in the sphere of compliance should have, and also you will see the example of good implementation of compliance function. So, what is compliance and why we need it? Recently, international community has begun to take some measures aimed at combating international terrorism and money laundering. And in this regard, many legal documents that obligate administrative and financial institutions to conduct a comprehensive study of business structure were created. In general, compliance means conforming to a rule, such as specification, policy, standard, or law. Regulatory compliance describes the goal that organizations aspire to achieve in their efforts to ensure that they are aware of and take steps to comply with relevant laws, policies, and regulations. In general, compliance system is recognized as international system of counteraction to threats and risk management, which ensure compliance of the company with the requirements of state bodies, self-regulating public and other organizations, compliance with the rules of law, general rules, recommendations, and standards governing the activities of such organizations. What is the purpose of implementing compliance? The main purpose of implementing compliance system is creation in the company effective mechanisms for identification and analysis of corruption areas of activity, assessment and management of legal and financial risk in the event of corruption, providing comprehensive protection of an enterprise or organization from a variety of legal, tax, economic, regulational sanctions and other threats, and also due diligence of physical and legal entities who are clients of the companies. So now we will speak about some relevant legislation which cover the issue of compliance. If we are talking about EU, in general, this question is covered by third and fourth directive on prevention the use of financial system for money laundering and terrorist financing. These two directives still in force, and they are bound all EU countries to follow the main rules. Also, each country in the European Union have their own legislation. It's almost similar with with EU directive, but sometimes they have also some differences. For example, in Cyprus, Directive DI 144 from 2000 and 7 with amendment from 2012 of the Cybersecurity Commission for the Prevention of Money Laundering and Terrorist Financing is directly the same as third directive. If we talk about Asia, here two main countries which have good anti-money laundering and compliance legislation, it's Singapore and Hong Kong. Also, one of the strongest legislation in European Union has United Kingdom. They make some amendments to the law, and now they use money laundering, terrorist financing, and transfer of funds regulation from 2017. If we are talking about post-Soviet Union countries, for example, in Russia, it's federal law from 2001, and in Ukraine, it's law on prevention of money laundering, legalization of funds, and terrorist financing from 2014. In general, all this legislation are familiar with FATF regulation. So more or less, they are all similar and they have the same requirements to financial institutions and legal entities to follow the rules inside and outside their companies. Also, compliance and has like worldwide definition, and it's also covered worldwide, the same as money laundering. So due to the extraterritorial nature of legalization of funds in the area of compliance, money laundering and financing of terrorism, it is better to know this legalization, this legislation, not only of the country of origin of the company, but also legislation of other countries, because they have cross-border issue. For example, it's USA Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, known as FCPA from 1977. Also FATCA, it's US Foreign Account Tax Compliance Act, and UK Bribery Act. What is the main issue of such? This legislation of UK and US apply to citizens of other countries. So even if you are not a citizen of United States or United Kingdom, anyway, you are covered by their legislation. In next situations, when citizens are outside of their country during the performance of illegal actions of a corrupt nature, regarding persons who are formally outside the scope of UK and US legislation, but in connection with the use of US and UK mail services or other means of conducting international trade, as well as a system for marketing payments, accounts opened in the US and British banks, EU countries, as instrument of illegal actions, and in relation to officials of organizations that fall under the term of foreign law under the sanctions of compliance standards. For example, under the US law, a well-known investigation was performed into the company Siemens with a fine of about $2 billion been awarded. Also a case against Daimler, which had to pay $2 million for bribery in various countries, including Russia. Also, there was some investigations about Russian company Mercedes-Benz, which was accused for bribery in Russian officials and their relatives, and was sentenced to pay a fine of $27 million. Also, investigations are being carried out for individuals that been caught for bribery and money laundering in Kazakhstan, Russia, China, Mexico, Bulgaria, Italy. So what are the main principles of implementing the compliance function? Compliance control should be implemented regardless of the size of the business, as all companies must comply with the law and control corruption. The main factor is the development of compliance is the state regulation, and when every transaction can be checked in terms of compliance, it stimulates, because nobody wants to risk a reputation or lose money. Compliance control in commercial organization involves and covers the following risks. It's ban on bills of operation, appointment of one-side inspections, administrative fines, sanction against officials, suspension of activities, license cancellation, recognition of the invalidity of economic transactions, damage to business reputation, which leads to a loss of investment attractiveness. In international law, compliance control is a special culture where next principles of implementing of the compliance function are reflected. It is independence, official status, clear subordination of compliance officers, elimination of conflict of interest, access to any internal information, necessary resource support, and interaction with regulatory and supervisory bodies. And now in details we will see what each of principle includes. So let's start with the first one. It's independence. So the principle of implementing the compliance control function consists of 4 separate compliance elements which are in close connection to each other. Compliance control service must have official status, and the principle of independence does not exclude close interaction of the compliance control group with the other divisions of the enterprise. Also, it is necessary to provide for a compliance specialist who is responsible for monitoring compliance group and coordination compliance risk management with all relevant information, and be sure that all the decision of compliance is independent. Also, on the all compliance components of the principle of independence should be considered as protective methods that create conditions for effective control of the compliance control function. In conditions of interaction between structural divisions, and the introduction and monitoring of compliance methods can have significant difference for different companies, and could comply with different size of companies as well. The second method is official status. It means that the standards regulating the function of compliance control necessary to prescribed in the international documents of the enterprise. Normative act on compliance control function should contain next provisions like tasks and functions of the compliance control structure and duties of compliance specialist, the principle of distribution of compliance control function by its units, if such exists inside the company, the right of those responsible for the compliance control function to obtain all information that is necessary, as well as the duty of employees to provide the necessary data to monitor compliance standards, obligation to report any suspicious to senior management of the company. Also, conditions for ensuring independence of compliance control, which was mentioned in previous principle. Also, compliance officers of the unit should have the right to freely express their opinion and transfer information regarding compliance control violations, commitment in the process of controlling compliance risk of the company. And direct access of specialist of compliance to the board of directors and its committees in order to report some suspicious. The next principle, that compliance should have clear subordination of compliance officers. Compliance experts working in the units are accountable to the heads of company structures and departments. At the same time, they can be accountable to the head of the compliance control through the organization with regards to compliance information. Also, compliance experts are obeyed to the senior management of the company. At the same time, they can be obeyed to the head of the compliance department. In some companies, compliance specialists could work inside some subsidiary departments like legal department, audit unit, etc., then it is possible that they are not obeyed to the head of compliance department. At the same time, compliance specialists of independent units should cooperate with the head of compliance department, and if the head of compliance service is not included to the senior management, such person must be obeyed to one of the top-ranking executive who does not have specific duties in a particular structure. And the next principle is elimination of conflict of interest. The independence of the head of the independence of the head or other specialist in the compliance control service can be distributed by the presence of a conflict of interest between the normal functions of the employee and his compliance control responsibilities. Ideally, representatives of compliance control should perform functions only in relation to compliance tasks, but this situation may be unacceptable for small organizations. It is for such firms to exclude the possibility of conflict of interest. One of the moments that leads to a conflict of interest involves the dependence of remuneration of the employee of the compliance service on the results and performance indicators of the structural unit in which they implement compliance function. At the same time, remuneration depending on the financial results of company can take place. So management of the company must be ensured that there is no conflict of interest between the decision of compliance officer, the employees of the company, and senior management of the company. Fifth principle is access to any internal information. Compliance control service may, on its own initiative, interact with any company employees and must have access to any files that are necessary to perform the compliance functions. The possibility of unlimited compliance work should be provided to specialists in all departments where compliance risk exists. In the process of solving compliance problems, compliance specialists have the right to investigate violations of compliance standards, including monitoring of potential compliance violations, with the involvement of internal or external specialists in specific industries. In the process of fulfillment the functions, specialists should have a free opportunity to provide data to a senior management. For this, it is necessary to exclude potential risk of threats and convictions from managers or any other representatives of the company. Next principle is necessary resource support. Compliance control unit should be adequately provided with resources. So the resources provided by the compliance control services should provide an opportunity for effective control and compliance management of risks. One of the important components of compliance resources is the qualification and experience of compliance specialists, as well as their personal qualities. Experts of compliance control services should be well versed in compliance issue, regulations, and understand their impact on the company's operations. The level of professional compliance control skills of staff of compliance department, especially for obtaining timely updates in legislation, should be provided through specific training and visiting on specific webinars. The last principle is interact with regulatory and supervisory bodies. A very topical issue for many organizations is the task of forming an effective system of cooperation of compliance service with all categories of inspection agencies. All companies without exception, when interacting with similar bodies, have some difficulties. So provision of documentation and its interpretation is a time-consuming process, and failure to provide information within the specified time period entails additional problems. In case of disagreement on the essence of a certain document, it is necessary to organize a constructive discussion of the disputable issues. This requires considerable diplomatic efforts, special expertise, and takes away resources from the core business. Also, special experience and qualification are needed in the issue of summarizing the results of external audits, especially in those situations when significant violations are revealed. For domestic companies, work with inspection service is a necessary component of successful operations. It is required not only great experience and special knowledge, but also the experience of certain powers cooperation. For example, the chief accountant, internal audit structures, and other departments could solve such tasks depending on the direction of the inspection of such institution. Next question is how to organize compliance control in the company. Companies have two options for how to organize compliance control. In one, the implementation of compliance issue can be established in front of departments or employees who are responsible for servicing the daily activities of the company. In this situation, it is important to strictly assign responsibilities, monitor them, and create conditions for fruitful cooperation. The second variant of compliance control looks more promising, in which the control of the ideology coping is included in the scope of the task of a separate compliance control unit or specialist. This creates conditions for the independence of the compliance system and the objectivity of its control. Independence of the compliance control is an important factor, since the implementation of its control by units that solve certain economic tasks carries potential risks. The next issue is the basic skills that an expert in the sphere of compliance should have. First is ability to interpret. There are very few black and white rules, so the ability to interpret the spirit of the rule as well as the actual language is important. Compliance staff must be able to work within the gray areas. Next one is attention to detail. This seems obviously because so many regulations require detailed analysis, but it's important to attend to the details while maintaining a view of a big picture. Next one, attention to the big picture. What does it mean? Compliance officers must understand the bigger picture and what the regulators are trying to accomplish with the regulation. They must also have the attention to details to help them figure out how to implement it. Fourth, ability to apply rules to real-life factors. It means that knowing the regulation inside and out is great, yet staff must have the ability to apply their facts to the rules and regulations. Fifth is risk assessment capabilities. The ability to assess the alternative and make a decision based on the risk is critical. Compliance officers must understand the risk tolerance of the credit union as well as litigation environment in this area. 6. Communication skills. Written and verbal communication skills are essential. The compliance officer must have the ability to communicate at all levels in the organization, from the frontline staff to the CEO and board of directors. Having compliance expertise adds little value if it can't be communicated effectively. And the last one is knowledge of compliance internal and external legislation, which we already discussed. Next, if compliance are implemented in the company effectively, we will have the next results. It will be the well-established system of detection and prevention of fraud, corruption, and other threats prevention and minimization of financial losses, bankruptcy, and the sanctions in relation to companies by regulators, early monitoring, recognition, and prevention of risks of non-compliance with some regulatory requirements. Also, it increases the efficiency of companies' activities and increasing their competitiveness and cost, and preservation and development of business reputation of the company. So now we will look to the example of good implementation of compliance function. As an example, I took one Russian mobile operator that has received significant practical experience in the field of compliance control. As a result, this mobile operator from Russia was admitted to New York Stock Exchange in 2000 and now have about 1/3 of the company shares are circulated on New York Stock Exchange. This fact in the field of compliance control encourage MTS to follow the ideology of the complex and strictly monitor of compliance with its standards. The company provides reporting to the Security and Exchange Commission of the United States and the rules of anti-corruption legislation of this country, as well as to UK. In this regard, compliance control is present in all areas of MTS activity. For example, even in contracts with employees of the company, compliance standards are prescribed, and contracts with business partners stipulate additional compliance agreements for compliance with anti-corruption legislation, anti-corruption compliance control. So, small conclusion. Compliance is more than satisfying the requirements of the legislation in the field of money laundering and legalization of funds. Also, adherence of the law is in fact the first manifestation of the concept of compliance for most companies and organizations. And an important element of compliance is adherence with organizational and monitoring requirements that the law imposes on the management of companies to prevent the illegal actions of employees or counterparties. In addition, compliance implies the creation of internal organizational structures to prevent violation of laws, as well as providing guidelines on the possible liability in the event of illegal actions of employees or counterparties. By simple words, due diligence. Also want to mention that Eltoma have very long experience in compliance, in company registration, in different areas, and we offer solutions for varying complexes from company registration, legal tax assistance to establish maintaining compass holding structures. Also, our services include company incorporation, bank account opening, bookkeeping, tax planning, IT, software for business, legal services, immigration. Also, we help with license and permits. Also, I want you to pay attention that we also provide compliance, external compliance for companies in Singapore, Hong Kong, and UK. If you're interested in it, please visit our website for more information. Also, if you need some recruitment services, you also could apply to our services, as we have good knowledge in HR. Also, we provide some real estate services in Cyprus. So if you're interested in some houses or bungalows in Cyprus, also welcome. Please visit our website for this. Please know that we have different offices all around the world. It's Cyprus, Singapore, Russia. In Russia, we have 2 offices in Moscow, St. Petersburg, Ukraine. Also in United Kingdom and Hong Kong, we have some our representatives. Thank you for your attention. If you have any questions, please refer to my email. You will see it in the end of this webinar. Thank you very much. Have a good day ahead. Hope to see you in our next webinars. Bye.